Okay, so here we are. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you're new to Calm Collective is a organization that was started during the circuit breaker in Singapore. So we're a child of the pandemic, and I'm Sabrina, one of the co-founders of Calm Collective, and our mission is really to normalize mental health conversations in Asia, or actually around the world also. And as part of our journey in normalizing mental health conversations, we've brought a lot of talks to our community. We've created a lot of content. We've created calm circles as well, where our community, you, can come be part of the conversation as well. And one thing that we realize is that in normalizing the mental health conversation within the society or culture that we live in, what's actually really important is that we have to normalize the conversation, mental health conversations within ourselves as well. So this is really, where the whole idea of how to be kinder with ourselves came up. And I was so thrilled when Karen and Ben brought up this idea of, going deeper into the realm of mindfulness, self-compassion, to really empower us to have the skills to cope with life's challenges and struggles and our feelings, all of that, right? So I'm just going to hand over the time today. It's going to be a mini workshop, and this is going to be the first of more talks and workshops for the year. And then towards the end, we'll okay, hang on. It'll be a 15-minute session where Karen and Ben will be leading the time or the stage, and then finally we will round off with about a 10-minute Q&A session. So you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions to Karen and Ben, and you may do so by, if you see that little Q&A button on the bottom of the screen or in a panel somewhere, you may ask your questions there, and then I will come back later and ask these questions on your behalf. All right, sounds good. Child of yes, I see Kavi. I've never actually said that out loud. Yes, and we're all children of the pandemic. It's new to us. I'll hand over the time now to Karen and Ben, and I'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're so impressed by what you and your team are doing, what you are kind of building from scratch. And we're so glad to be able to be here and support it. Thank you for being here, everyone. And the main purpose of our talk tonight is to give you a taste of the soup, if you will. We're not going to talk theory much. We're not going to try and teach you stuff. We're going to try and help you taste something, see if you like the taste, and help you to taste it in a way that you can make it at home. So let me just start. Let me just start by inviting you, because I know a lot of us are a little bit tired or a little bit meh at the end of the day. Let me invite you to let's just take a moment to arrive. In the MSC, we call this a soft landing. That is to say, bringing the mind back to the body in the present moment so that our wheels touch ground softly. So let me invite you to, whatever you're doing, maybe you could allow your hands to be empty for just a moment. Allow your hands to be empty for just a moment. Maybe you have your eyes closed. Maybe you have your eyes open. And just take a few breaths. Just take a moment to breathe in and breathe out. And see if you can just notice how it feels when you breathe. If you're feeling tired, if it is the end of a long day, when you've been focused or facing challenges, perhaps imagining with each out breath, you're breathing out a little bit of the stress of the day. You're kind of releasing some of that tension, just a little bit with each out breath. And I want to invite you to scan through your body. Just notice however the energy of your body is right now. And whatever you notice, see if you could give yourself permission for it to be like this. Just for one breath. Let go of needing to change it or control it or fix it. Just let it be. And if it feels right for you, if you can do this without forcing yourself, I just want to invite you to very gently curve the corners of your mouth very slightly upwards into a smile that would be invisible from the outside. And just notice how that feels. And maybe direct that energy to yourself for taking the time and energy to show up for a webinar after a long day. And then open your eyes. We're so excited to be here. We're going to take a few minutes to introduce this webinar, to give you some stuff, and then we're going to practice. We're going to try and give you 2 core practices that will help you be kinder to yourself in 2022. And they're going to be pretty different. They're going to be on different sides of self-compassion that we're going to talk about. So my name is Ben Weinstein. I'm American at the root, and I've been living in Bangkok for the last 20 years. I'm a clinical psychologist, and more importantly, I'm a teacher of mindful self-compassion, a program developed by Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, 2 American psychologists who are also mindfulness practitioners, and that's shared all over the world. The Mindful Self-Compassion Program is a personal growth and development program. It's not a form of treatment or therapy, although it does have therapeutic effects. And our purpose, Karen and I are actually going to start teaching the course in a few weeks. We'll talk more about that at the end. But we want to give you a taste.
Ben is frozen. I think he will come back soon. So I'm praying to the Zoom God in the meantime that you unfreeze. Now he's back now. Yeah.
Okay, what was the last thing that was heard?
Giving a taste.
Okay, so our goal is to give you a taste, and I'm gonna hand it over to you, Karen. Why don't you take it away?
Yes, thank you, Ben, so much for introducing, what this session is going to be about and a little bit about mindful self-compassion as well. So my name is Karen. I'm a clinical psychologist, and right now I'm in private practice, and I'm very passionate about education as well. So I am teaching at Yale NUS, NTU, and Sigmund Freud University in Vienna, and I'm also a mindful self-compassion teacher. And most importantly, I'm a human. Yeah, I'm a human who has flaws, who has imperfection and moments, that I feel inadequate, right? And I personally feel that mindful self-compassion has supported me tremendously. Yeah, and I feel transformed, with my knowledge and practice of self-compassion, and that's why I feel really compelled to teach it as well. And in my own private practice, or even when I was working in a hospital and community, I find that a lot of my clients really respond well to mindful self-compassion practice as well. And I'm so excited today to share this with you. And right now, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen now, the 3 important components of mindful self-compassion. Okay, I hope all of you can see it. Right? So in essence, mindful self-compassion is about befriending ourselves, right? It's about showing ourselves kindness and, just like how we would treat a good friend too. So there are 3 components of self-compassion, mindful self-compassion. So the first one on the left, you can see it's mindfulness. And it's, having this awareness of the physical, emotional, or mental pain of the moment. And really, in order for us to respond to ourselves with compassion, it is so important, to also first know that we are struggling too, right? So, the first step is just to notice what kind of pain we are experiencing in the moment. And mindfulness allows us to turn towards these painful feelings and just be with them as they are, right? And mindfulness is also a balanced state of awareness. So we don't actually suppress and try to avoid and push difficult feelings away, nor we sort of like get carried away with the stories in our minds, right? So the stories in our head can be, I'm just not good enough, I'm inadequate, I'm, good for nothing, da da da, right? It's so easy for us to, just over-identify with all these stories, right? So mindfulness actually helps us to stay grounded and present. And next, common humanity is also a very important component of mindful self-compassion. It's just simply recognizing that, the times where that we struggle, when we have imperfections, it's just a normal part of being human, right? And, often when we struggle or when we fail, we think that, oh gosh, is there something wrong with me? Am I abnormal? Right? And this kind of, feelings actually can make us feel really isolated from others, right? So recognizing that, this common humanity that we are all part of, that whatever, struggling that we have is part of our human experience, can help us feel more connected to others as well and to ourselves. Yeah. And last but not least is self-kindness. It's really about treating ourselves with kindness and just like how we treat a dear friend. And a very important question I like to ask myself is, what do I need in this moment? Right? What do I need in this moment? And then giving myself the permission to assess these needs. Yeah. So mindful self-compassion, is quite different from, other, say, empathy, because, it has this action component of it. It's taking action to alleviate our suffering, right? It's not just noticing it, but, being able to take some steps actually to ease our pain and suffering. Yeah. And now Ben will talk a little bit about the yin and the yang of self-compassion. Ben, you are muted. Mhm.
Zoom snafu. Thanks. Thank you so much, Karen. Right. And again, I always, and no matter how many times I hear about those three elements, and I first did the program myself as a participant in 2016, and that's when I first saw some TED Talks and read some articles about it, and then registered for the program. But I never get tired of hearing them again, right, and being reminded, because we're going to show you that these are not concepts. These are not concepts. These are realities that can be touched in daily life. That's what we hope to give you a taste of. But there's one more piece we have to add in, and we're going to try and give you a taste of this as well, is that there's a lot of misconceptions about compassion in general and self-compassion in particular. We don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to be quick, but we need to understand that compassion is not just something that is tender and loving and soft, which is our typical conception of compassion, but that there's also a side of compassion that can be firm and strong and fierce. And this is very important, and the same is true for self-compassion. So we talk about a yin and a yang of self-compassion, where the yin side of self-compassion is what most people think about. It is a tender, nourishing, loving, validating, soothing, calming side of self-compassion, which is really, again, this sense, as Karen said, of being a friend.
Being a friend to ourselves. I'm, completing Ben's sentence as he freezes. So all who are present, please pray to the Zoom God. And now Ben is back. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well done, Karen. Thank you. But there's another side. There's another side, which we call the yang side of self-compassion, which Dr. Kristen Neff.
Dr. Christine Neff and Chris Germer, they are the founders of Mindful Self-Compassion and done so much research behind that as well. And there's a new book called The Fierce Self-Compassion. Yeah.
So it's the fierce, firm, side of self-compassion, which we can use to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, and to act in the world, even to motivate ourselves. So we're going to do 2 exercises. The reason that Karen can complete my sentences is because we're actually a cybernetic organism and we share a single brain. It's a little bit personal, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to move into practice, because we really want you to walk out of here with something that you can use for the rest of the year. So Karen's going to lead a practice on the yin side of self-compassion, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then I'm going to lead a practice on the yang side of self-compassion. All right.
Thank you so
Karen?
much, Ben. Yes. So right now, I'd like all of you to just settle into a comfortable position, okay, whatever you're sitting or lying on. And just allowing yourself to, perhaps close your eyes or having just a downward gaze. And taking 3 slow, deep breaths. Just letting go of whatever stress or tension that you're holding in your body right now. And this practice that we're going to do is going to invite some tenderness, yeah. And it's the inside of self-compassion, and it's to bring in this loving, connected presence with ourselves, right? Especially when we are hurting or we're in need of some care. So I would like you to invite you to think of a situation whereby, it's quite difficult for you and it's causing you quite a bit of stress right now. So for instance, it can be you sort of writing down your New Year resolutions for 2022 and thinking, gosh, there are so many things I didn't do in 2021. Yeah. Or it can be perhaps a situation whereby you think of yourself as being inadequate, or you have made some mistakes. Just feeling bad about yourself. And if it feels right, you can also put a hand on your heart or your chest, just to invite this loving kindness and awareness to yourself. And as you think about this situation that's difficult for you, allowing yourself to see, hear, and feel your way into the problem. And just being curious whether you experience any uneasiness or discomfort in your body. Where do you feel it the most? Is it in your head, your throat, your chest, your stomach, or any other parts of your body? And just making contact with this discomfort that you're feeling in your body right now. And then saying to yourself slowly and clearly, this is a moment of suffering. And that's mindfulness. Other options might include, gosh, this is so difficult. This is painful, it hurts. And next, saying to yourself again, slowly and clearly, suffering is a part of living. This is a part of being human. There is nothing wrong with me. And that is common humanity. And now, putting your hands over your heart if it feels right, or whatever, on your body that you feel supportive. Feeling the warmth of your hands on your body. If you like, you can also gently stroke it, just like what I'm doing. And saying to yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I give myself what I need. And that is self-kindness. That is in self-compassion. Other options might be, may I accept myself just as I am. Or may I gradually accept myself just as I am. May I care for myself tenderly in this moment. And if you're having difficulty finding the right words, that's okay. That's really normal. Just imagine that a dear friend or loved one is having the same problem as you. What would you say to this person to comfort and to soothe them? And is this the same message that you can offer yourself? And now taking another few slow, deep breaths. And just gently letting go of this practice. And whenever you're ready, opening your eyes again if you close your eyes, and just coming back to our space together on Zoom. Thank you for doing this practice with me. Yeah. And I'm curious how this practice was like for all of you. Yeah. And thank you, Carvi, for your emoticons as well in chat. So appreciate that. Yeah. Just put it in chat if you have any sort of, words or insight you'd like to share. Sabrina has a heart shape. Love, Amos, loved. Complete. At peace. Peace. Kind to myself. Everything is in balance again. So just a brief practice of about 10 minutes, we can recenter and balance ourselves, feeling safe, cradled.
Cradled.
Yeah, acceptance of the moment of suffering, as Joyce pointed out, is really important. Yeah, calm, realize that you're kind to others, but sometimes we're not kind to ourselves. Yeah, some of the people I work with, the sort of nasty things they say to themselves, they wouldn't even say to strangers, right? Yeah. And Chris said, very helpful to develop compassionate words for a friend and then bring it to ourselves. Right. And thank you all for your sharing. Yeah. Okay, so calm you almost fell asleep. Okay, so maybe that's what your body needs in this moment. That's what maybe your body needs, right? Sleep, rest. Yeah. Centered, cooling, relaxed. So Kathy is saying, often the high performer and remind myself to slow down. I'm human too and won't always accomplish everything I need in a day. Reminds myself to give myself that self-compassion when unpredictability happens. Yes, thank you so much, Kathy. I connect so much with what you say as well, right? We're always on the go, go, go mode. So just taking a few moments to connect with ourselves, to slow down can be so important, right? And Chris, thank you for coming here today when it's your birthday, right? It is a gift to be kind to yourself, the greatest gift, I think. Yeah. So many people wishing Chris happy birthday. Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. And HB said, like my mother when I was toddler. Yeah. So, self-compassion also has the element of like parenting ourselves as well, right? Soothing ourselves with tenderness. So now, thank you all for your input. I'm really, glad to hear your experiences with the practice, what connected with you, and how you feel as well after doing this in self-compassion. Yeah, and it's really a good reminder to be kind to ourselves despite this hectic work week. that we are all in, right? Joyce, I think, many of us can resonate with that as well. So I'll give the time back to Ben now to talk about Yang self-compassion.
Yeah, provided Ben doesn't freeze again. Thank you so much, Karen, for guiding that practice. And again, the practice that Karen just guided, we call the self-compassion break. And again, just imagine, because maybe Joyce, maybe it's not despite, maybe that can become because I'm having a hectic day. I need 3 minutes, I need 5 minutes for a break. And just think about that. For everybody who just did the exercise that Karen led, what if you could have 2 more minutes like this a day? Would you want that? Would that be a gift you'd want to give yourself? What if 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes? What if you could be a resource of calm and peace and soothing, maybe even love for yourself? Right? This is the power. And there's a deep, you need to think about it like a muscle. This is the power of that yin side of self-compassion. And now that I'm going to talk about the yang side and guide you on a practice, because there's another side of life. There's another side of life where we need to get stuff done, where we need to face difficulties, face challenges, meet deadlines, and of course, really importantly, pick ourselves up when we fall down, right? And keep going. And how do we do that? Right? So I'm going to lead a process now that we talk about motivating ourselves with kindness. Motivating ourselves. Because again, a lot of people have misconceptions about motivation. They in fact think something like, well, if I'm kind to myself, I'll lose motivation. This is a very common belief. It's one of the 5 most common myths about self-kindness. If I'm kind to myself, I will not perform. In fact, the research about this, and there are now a number of published studies on exactly this topic, self-compassion and performance and motivation. People who are self-compassionate perform better. They perform more consistently, and they bounce back quicker in the face of setbacks. But again, it's just not what we've been taught. We have this tendency to beat ourselves up when we are in that situation. So why don't we try a taste of this one? We call this one motivating ourselves with compassion. So let me again just take a moment. Again, set aside. Let me invite you to set aside the keyboard for a moment. Let your hands be empty. If you like. If you really don't want to, you don't have to. Let your hands be empty. And I guess if I get frozen, maybe Karen can jump in. She's heard me lead this a couple of times. Let your eyes close gently if that feels right, or maybe have your eyes open with a soft and unfocused gaze. And just take a few breaths. Notice how the energy of your body and mind are right now. If you're still enjoying any good energy from that other practice, take a moment to savor that. If you've been feeling hectic and now you're feeling calm, maybe just take a few moments to enjoy that calmness. Maybe like a mental snapshot. Now, what I'd like to invite you to do is I'd like to invite you to bring into your mind a challenge that you are facing in the coming week, or longer if you like, maybe a challenge that you're facing in the next month. I know you probably have a lot of things on your to-do list. It's helpful for this exercise, especially if you're doing this for the first time. It's really helpful if you just choose one. Maybe there's a project at work. Maybe you have a coworker at work who's kind of difficult. That Ben, sometimes Ben's a real jerk. Maybe it's a family issue, right? Maybe there's something in your family that's turning into a big challenge, or financial difficulty. I just want you to take a moment and bring into mind some of this situation, some of this challenge. what you're worried about. And just notice how the energy of your body is. Maybe you get tense, maybe you get afraid, maybe your mind starts racing with plans, maybe you feel a little bit discouraged or down, maybe you feel empowered. But taking a moment to appreciate that there are so many things in life you don't control. So many circumstances and conditions, like when a circuit breaker gets flipped, right? When a lockdown's going to happen, other people's behavior. So taking a moment to take a breath and come back to you, ask yourself this question. How would I like to face this challenge? What qualities of heart and mind would I like to bring to this challenge? What would I like to guide me? Is it courage? Do I want to stand up for myself? Is it perhaps kindness, that I really want to approach this with kindness for myself and others? Is it creativity or flexibility or patience? What would you like to guide you, to be your North Star? And if this can get very heady, very mindy, if a lot of stuff comes up in your mind, for the purpose of the exercise today, just choose one. Later on, you can repeat this and you can choose something else. Just choose one quality. Like, again, just courage or kindness or compassion or creativity, fortitude, whatever is connecting for you at this moment. And I want you to make it into a wish. Like, may I be guided by kindness. Or may I act with courage. Or I am determined to face this and be guided by courage. Whatever words connect for you. I promise to be as courageous as I can in facing this, or I promise to be as kind as I can. Don't worry about whether you're getting it right or wrong, but just make a sentence. Almost like a little promise to yourself. And then when I want you to do the following, I want you to make a fist, not too tight, just a gentle fist. And I want you to place the fist over your heart. This is a symbol of strength and power. And feeling the energy of your fist resting gently on your heart. As you breathe in and out, I want you to start to repeat that little promise to yourself. May I be guided by courage, or I'm determined to act with fortitude, whatever the words are for you. Not with urgency, peacefully and with determination, breathing in and out once, and repeating the phrase. Now, when you do this, you may notice that an argument starts to happen in your mind. Maybe there's a voice that says, oh, you're not courageous, or you can't do it. See if you can just come back to the feeling of your fist. And now I want to invite you to take your other hand and tenderly embrace the fist. So we combine these energies and keep repeating these phrases. You might even imagine that these words are a friend speaking to you, a wise friend who knows what you can do when you're at your best. You might even visualize these words as having a face. And that face is smiling at you. It's not scowling at you. It's not shaking a finger at you. These words believe in you. They don't expect you to be perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying with what matters to you. These words are like a friend of yours saying, I know you can do it. Let's keep going. When you make a mistake and when you fall down, when you are on your knees, frustrated, demotivated, disappointed, maybe beating yourself up, these words will get down on their knees right next to you and put a hand on your shoulder and whisper in your ear, I've got you. It's okay. When you're ready, let's get back up and keep going. Now I want to invite you to release the practice. Just take a moment to rest quietly in your own body. Just notice how that connected for you, or maybe didn't connect for you. And whenever you're ready, gently opening your eyes. And I love to invite folks to write in the chat. So this was an exercise we call motivating yourself with kindness. Motivating yourself with kindness, we're using the yang side of self-compassion to give us persistence, tenacity, fortitude. We'd love to invite people to write 1 or 2 words in the chat. When you practice motivating yourself with kindness for the first time, please give yourself permission to be a beginner. What was that like? Amos writes, I feel empowered with courage. Hui feels comforted and I can push on. That's frequently how I feel when I do this, Hui, that I can push on. May I be guided with love. Pinky was asleep, right? Excellent, right? Because again, that's an example of self-compassion, when you give yourself permission for what you need. When was touched. Yeah, so Chris's words might be, may I be guided by faith and hope. Or I promise to act and be guided by faith and hope as much as I can. Dave writes, I'm no longer alone. Right? This is, thanks Dave for sharing that. I don't think everybody saw that. I think just the host and panelists saw that. But I want to repeat it because it's really important, right? This is what happens when we cultivate our inner strength. It's like having an inner ally. And that's what we do when we, in the mindful self-compassion program, we cultivate an inner ally who supports us when we're down, who helps protect us, and who helps to motivate us. It's not just about soothing, although that's a really important piece about it. Yeah, Ariani says, so tender yet empowering. Kristen Neff calls this caring force. When we bring together yin and yang, right? All right. So again, I just want to invite you to take a moment and reflect on these 2 practices. Reflect on the self-compassion break, the yin practice that Karen led, this motivating yourself with kindness, the yang practice that I just led, and just think about how you might want to use these things. Which do you feel you need more of starting tomorrow? You can find these practices, for example, I'm on Insight Timer, and there are 2 versions on this motivating yourself with kindness. There's recordings of Karen available doing the self-compassion break, and also in many places, if you just Google self-compassion break, you can find that. And now we'd love for Sabrina to give us some of your questions.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Ben and Karen. Thank you so much. I was also practicing in the background, and that was very grounding for me. And so I'm here to ask some questions on behalf of our audience. So if any of you have any questions for Ben or Karen, you can, this is your last chance to do so, at least for this remaining hour, the remaining part of the hour. Someone from the audience actually asked, why do we tear during mindfulness, although I'm not sad or emotionally unhappy? Is it a way that my body releases the toxic or byproduct from the body? Is there a connection there?
Yeah, it comes to my mind, backdraft. Yeah, Ben, do you agree?
I think backdraft can be part of it, Karen. I think for me, when I'm practicing, I will frequently tear up when I'm practicing. And I think it's because we carry around, especially high performing people who, like someone mentioned in the Kavi mentioned, or someone mentioned in the chat before, high performing people, all of us juggle a lot of responsibilities and are dealing with a lot of overload. We become accustomed to carry around a much higher level of tension, and we could say a psychological load, which we're able to bear, but we're not aware of that. And very frequently, when we actually take a moment to stop, we start to feel some of that, and some of that comes up and releases. And a very common way for it to release is through tears, although not for everyone. For other people, it can take other forms. Although sometimes I think it can also be the backdraft that Karen's referring to, where we're kind of having a reaction to
What exactly is backdraft? It's like unfamiliar for me, to me.
So Ben, do you want me to? I think you can explain the firefighter sort of analogy really well. I'll take a shot at explaining it. So it's a sense of, maybe a resistance, right? When we start to practice mindfulness, and you can imagine, when a room is on fire, and the firefighters want to put out the fire, and they open the door, and when they do so, the oxygen rushes in, and then there's this like kaboom effect, right? And sometimes, there might be this rush of discomfort that we feel when we practice mindfulness or self-compassion. Yeah. And that's how, the tears can come about as well, right? And I think, like Ben said, it can be a sort of like a release of a lot of, tension or sadness or emotions that we hold in ourselves, right? So when we, expose ourselves to, not expose, right? We practice self-compassion, right? There might be times that we remember, moments whereby we didn't, treat ourselves with kindness, or moments we were not treated with kindness as well, right? And that can also bring up a lot of sadness and pain for us.
Yeah, that sounds like I can only imagine that a lot of sadness, pain, emotions can come up when you finally stop and pause and allow that to come up for you, right? So in that case, how I'm actually really curious as to how mindful self-compassion actually works together with your therapy practice as well. Maybe Ben?
Yeah,
Would you
Ben?
like to answer
Yes.
that? Like for the individual, how can one, I guess leverage mindful self-compassion and therapy together? How does that work?
Everyone's dealing with different things. And, Chris, Karen and I both work as therapists, although MSC is not a form of therapy. A lot of therapists like it because many of the problems that we deal with in therapy are what psychologists would call self-regulation problems, which are either about dealing, and there's a couple of different kinds of self-regulation problems, like dealing with painful emotions. And what a lot of people do is avoid them or get shut down by them, which is also a form of avoidance. Or a kind of self-regulating behavior, right? Like motivating ourselves to do stuff like we don't enjoy or that we find aversive, right? And so it turns out, and I think, that for those of us who do therapy, we find that the tools of self-compassion are super useful for these self-regulatory tasks that come up with a lot of clients about how to deal with pains of grief or loss, how to deal with pains they've been carrying for a long time, how to deal with intense stresses of a situation they're facing now in life, even if nothing ever happened before. So it's a way of bringing together a whole bunch of different techniques and things that we've used for many years, but it's just simple and it's simple, practical, and direct. It doesn't require going back to our childhoods. If it doesn't require changing other people. It's empowering ourselves. Although I really want to add, and I think that's how Karen and I use it in therapy. I'd love to hear more about it from Karen. I want to add that the program has a very significant advantage over therapy, is that in the group setting, it's even more powerful. Because no matter how many times I say to my clients, you're a normal person, you're a regular human being, many people retain a doubt and they don't believe me, no matter how warm I am. And I wouldn't say I'm like the super warmest therapist, right? But in the group, in the context of the group, people get to hear the real experience from other people who have no motivation whatsoever to mislead. And there's something incredibly empowering about experiencing that directly, about, wow, these folks are having the same experience as me, right? And that's the common humanity, which is an incredibly growthful and healing element. What do you think, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. I connect with what you said. It's really normalizing the experiences that people have and very much connected with Calm Collective, right? Normalizing,
It's also why we do this.
Exactly.
The groups are a better way to grow and develop than in the individual therapy, as useful as it is, and it's part of my life's work, is not a natural kind of thing. Whereas the groups, like the Calm Circles, are a really beautiful thing that can produce so much benefit for people. We have evolved to function in groups.
Yes.
Although again, it's, of course, so many people have suffered so intensely as well, and our societies are characterized by disconnection and alienation around the world, right? That we have a lot to overcome.
Yeah, and I really like how, mindful self-compassion skills are so practical, right? And you can really just practice it in the moment as well. So in therapy, these are, skills that I would complement with compassion-focused therapy. I think someone also mentioned in Q&A, and also with acceptance and commitment therapy as well. They all gel really well. And, when our clients, they feel dysregulated, they feel distressed, these are the skills that can really practice in the moment, right? They're not saying, okay, I got to wait another week before I see my therapist again, or okay, I got to book my massage, right, next week, okay? So it's something they can really practice in the here and now to calm and center themselves. And this is something I personally, do myself too, right? So for instance, I was rushing from another meeting before I joined the talk today, and I practiced some self-compassion to actually calm and center myself before I enter. So I personally find it so useful and transformative.
Yeah, no, that's it definitely complements therapy, and I mean, I think a lot of us are able to. I mean, I think there's so many. Mindful self-compassion is really a tool for us to cope with the day-to-day challenges of life, right? And I think that kind of brings us to the next set of questions. And quite a lot of our attendees today are really interested in the mindful self-compassion course that you've mentioned earlier, and I would love to hear more about that. So, firstly, how do you conduct this course? Because I know, Ben, you're in Thailand, Karen's in Singapore, and we're a global community here.
Karen, you're in Singapore?
No, I'm in
Wait.
Germany now.
What? No, sorry, Sabrina.
I'm in Singapore. Our group enjoys Ben humor a lot. Yeah. Yes.
Ben, yeah, funny. Okay, so
All right, Karen, how's the group work?
go ahead.
So yes, it's exactly what we are doing here. When Ben and I last ran the group, we have participants from all over the world, and it's such an enriching experience just learning from each other. I think COVID has made it, I think this is silver lining of COVID really, made it possible for us to really do this group online, right? Rather than just having it in person. Because honestly, pre-COVID, I think almost all mindful self-compassion sessions are in person. Yeah. And that is great, but I think that also reduces accessibility and also the opportunity to meet people from all over the world to share their experiences. And it's so interesting, right? Even though people come from all over the world, there's the element of common humanity that Ben talked about as well, which is also very powerful in a group setting. Mm.
Yeah, so the structure of the group is 8 core sessions plus a half-day silent retreat. And it's where people receive, the instructors are not silent, but participants are silent, right? And it's actually just 27 hours. And in the course of that 27 hours, we go through about 24 different skills, including roughly 7 guided meditations and about 15, 16 what we call daily practices for daily life. And the ones that we just led are 2 of those. Karen did the self-compassion break, and there's actually 3 different forms of the self-compassion break. And I just did motivating ourselves with kindness, which are 2 of the skills. And what's really interesting is that, again, once a person has done the course and they continue to practice, and there's a lot of ways to continue to practice. I think Karen and I get messages from people 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, about how they have changed their lives, right? They have, by continuing to practice for 5 minutes a day or for 30 minutes 3 times a week, or whatever it is that was right for them, that they have built these muscles, kind of like going to the gym. They've built these muscles, and these muscles have changed their life. And it's really given Karen and I are in this line of work because that's what we want to hear, right? And that's why. So that's and the coming program will start on February the 21st, and it's going to be Monday evenings. Monday evenings, 6:30 Singapore time. It's a 3-hour session, and we. Yeah, you can register up until February the 20th, but there's an early bird discount until January the 31st. So before you go away for Lunar New Year, decide if maybe 2022 is the year you wanna.
Yeah, it's not too late for New Year's resolutions, I think.
It's never too late to start fresh.
Exactly, that's true. So we'll actually be sharing more information in our follow-up email tomorrow, when we're going to be sending out the replay for the talk as well. And obviously you're gonna be able to access the replay and practice with Karen and Ben anytime too. But it'd be great if you can come join them and pick up the skills yourself at the course. I have another question if you're not running off yet. So I think at least in Singapore, and I've done the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course. What is the difference between the two? Maybe a quick answer. Karen?
So I have done MBSR, so that's the mindfulness-based stress reduction. Sabrina, you mentioned. I've done the MBCT, which is the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and also MSc, of course, right? And I personally, connected so much with MSc. Yeah, because, I think mindful self-compassion has this loving kindness element, which is not in, MBSR or MBCT, right? And loving kindness is really cultivating, this friendliness towards ourselves and has this warming quality to it. right? And I was saying, someone asked in Q&A, what is the difference between MSc compared to other mindfulness courses, right? So MSc, the focus is not so much on mindfulness. Of course, mindfulness is a part of it, it's the foundation. Like I mentioned just now, without awareness, we are suffering. How do we give ourselves compassion, right? So mindfulness has this cooling, quality to it, help us to, maybe feel a bit more centered, grounded, right? But, compassion in contrast is more of this warming quality to it, warming, our hearts and, the relationship to ourselves as well. So that's really the contrast, right? I think, MSc compared to other mindfulness courses.
And when people learn mindfulness without also cultivating compassion, in fact, many people have to stop and they become overwhelmed in their mindfulness practice.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is, I never took any of the courses that Karen mentions, although I knew about them and I was following the research, because I was never attracted to them. I had my own personal spiritual mindfulness practice, and I really wanted to integrate it as a psychologist, but those programs had no pull for me. And I felt that they weren't going to be sufficient for the kinds of hurts, the traumas, the depressions, the difficulties that people walk around with. And it's very much the case that it can be very difficult for some people, because mindfulness, awareness without compassion can become harmful, or it's just impossible to manage.
Definitely. It can be very overwhelming when you're now aware of all the things that are there, right? What do you do with it?
The first time that someone, when I was in graduate school, and a visiting professor came in and led a seminar and guided a mindfulness activities. This was the first time I participated in a mindfulness activity when I was, it was in the late 90s. And I had a terrible experience. I had an absolutely terrible experience because, and that guy was a lovely guy. I had a terrible experience because I dropped into a really painful place that I was not ready for at 8 in the morning on a work day when I had to go out and go through my hospital routine, for the next 8 hours. And as a result, I stayed away from mindfulness for 4 or 5 years after that. Whereas if that had been guided with self-compassion, it would have been a different experience. And I think a lot of people have experiences like that, but not everybody. Some people, we know that people benefit from mindfulness. We know that people benefit enormously from MBSR and from
MBCT.
And MBCT. They're proven programs, and so is MSc. And I think over the course of time we'll see more data showing that MSc is highly effective, and maybe even either more effective or more effective across a broader range of populations.
And I see in the chat, Amos, shared his experience of taking these 3 different mindfulness courses. And, similarly, he found MSc to connect with him the most, right? And he's absolutely right. Taking MBSR and MBCT forms a good foundation going into MSc, but that is not necessary. That is not absolutely necessary, right? So when I was working at a toxic workplace, I took all this mindfulness courses, right? MBCT, MBSR, MSc. But, to be honest, the skills that I learned from MSc was really the ones that supported me, both the yin compassion and the yang compassion as well, right? So for instance, the yin compassion really helps to support me when I was suffering this tenderness, right? That really, really helped me to hold the pain. And the yang compassion really gave me the courage to get out of the toxic workplace, right? It was very tricky to get out of it for a variety of reasons, but that really gave me the, motivation and the strength to fight through it, right? So I think this is the difference really, MSc compared to other MSc mindfulness courses.
No, I really, really appreciate the balance between the yin and the yang perspectives. And I think that really, answers the question around, okay, so compassion sounds like, something really soft. What if I'm so compassionate that I don't do anything about it? I get walked over, So I really appreciate that view. So thank you so much for sharing.
There's another difference if we have another minute.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that I really like, is that in unlike these other programs and many others, the MSc is co-taught. If you look at a course and it's not two teachers, it's not real MSc. And this is really, really important. MSc, the center and Chris and Kristen insist there need to be two teachers in the room, and ideally two teachers who are different, because there's a classic issue in training programs, and it doesn't matter, psychology or whatever. There's a classic issue in these kind of training and personal growth programs where people model on the group, on the leader, and they try to imitate the leader or think the leader's doing things correctly. And that's rarely, everyone has to kind of discover their own way of applying these things, right? And in MSc, there's always two different models in the room, which is why it's a pleasure for me to teach with someone like Karen, who's from a different culture, where we're different genders, you know, and we bring different perspectives, even though we're both psychologists. And it's so valuable, right? Because then people, it's people see that, oh, Ben and Karen don't do this the same. So that, and you know, and what's my way of doing this? And we don't even have to say it. We're showing it that way.
Yeah.
And this is so important, because people, there's a lot of this tendency just to model what other people do versus noticing, nope, there's a lot of different ways to do things.
Yeah, and ultimately, I guess for the individual, it's about finding what works for themselves as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think you know, we've gone a bit past time for tonight, and if you have more questions for Ben or Karen, you can always send a note to us over LinkedIn, Instagram, email. We're kind of everywhere, and I would love to hear before we go what your self-compassion practice is going to be about, or what you took away from today's session in the chat. If not, you can also just go off. Goodbye and good night. But before we go, I just wanted to let you know that you will be able to find more information in your inbox tomorrow about Dr. Ben and Dr. Karen's MSc program, and you'll also be able to indicate your interest in our survey after this talk. And so with regards to Calm Collective, we're going to have more things coming up. We have our Calm Circles, as Ben mentioned earlier. It's happening on the 8th of February. And we also have the news on our latest programs and content through our email newsletter. You can also follow us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Calm Collective Asia. We are there. We're also on TikTok now. So yes, stay tuned for more information. We're also going to be running a volunteer drive. We're also going to be launching a pilot of a new project. So you'll find out more in the next weeks. And otherwise, thank you, everyone, and good night, and take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Sabrina and the team at Calm Collective.
Yes,
you guys are doing
thank
amazing
you.
stuff.
Yes,
we're so pleased.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And thank
you.
you all for showing up. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye. And may
night.
you be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Bye.
May you be kind to
well.
yourself in 2022.
Yes. And the years
Yes.
beyond.
And for every day.